In 2008, 300,000 Chinese babies developed kidney stones from a chemical used to make whiteboards, which also somehow passed every single government food safety test with a perfect score. This is a real thing that happened. China's dairy industry in the mid-2000s worked like this. Big corporations like Sanlu Group, one of the country's largest dairy brands, did not actually own cows. They bought raw milk from thousands of independent smallholder farms. Picture yourself as a dairy farmer in 2006. You have 3, maybe 4 cows. You milk them, fill a metal bucket, and bike it down to the local collection station. These stations were basically guys with big metal vats and a working allergy to oversight. The guy buys your milk, dumps it in with milk from 100 other farmers, and sells the whole vat to Sanlu. This happened thousands of times a day across a network so fragmented and loosely monitored that calling it a quality control system is doing an enormous amount of heavy lifting for that phrase. The pay structure made it worse. Processors paid per liter, but weighed by protein content. Higher protein reading, higher payout, which gave every single person in the supply chain a direct, immediate financial incentive to make their milk look richer than it actually was. All they needed was something to fool the test, and to fool the test, they needed to know exactly what the test was measuring. So, how does the food industry test for protein content? Great question. You use the Geldahl method. Invented in 1883 by Danish chemist named Johann Gendel, who worked, of all places, for the Carlsberg Brewery. Yes, the beer company. He was trying to measure the protein content in barley grain for more consistent brewing. His solution? Boil organic matter in concentrated sulfuric acid at 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Standard Tuesday for a 19th century chemist. Johann has been dead for 119 years and therefore cannot be held for questioning. Yet his beer brewing math trick remains the global standard for protein testing in food. Here's the problem. The Geldahl method doesn't test for protein, it tests for nitrogen. It measures total nitrogen in a sample, multiplies that reading by a conversion factor, usually 6.25, and confidently calls the result protein content. The underlying assumption is that all nitrogen in food comes from protein. Circular, optimistic, completely fine. Fine. Right up until someone decided to put plastic in milk. Enter melamine. Melamine is a mass-produced industrial chemical. If you own a whiteboard, a laminate countertop, or any heavy-duty plastic dinnerware, you own melamine. It makes things hard, heat-resistant, and about as edible as a park bench. The World Health Organization has a formal position on consuming fire-retardant plastic, and that position is no. But here's the critical detail. Melamine is approximately 66% nitrogen by molecular weight. For comparison, actual whey protein is around 16% nitrogen. Melamine is, in terms of nitrogen density, essentially a cheat code for the Geldahl method, an almost offensively high nitrogen content for something engineered to coat a kitchen counter. And it costs a fraction of the price of an actual protein powder. So here's the exploit, laid out simply. First, water down the milk to pad the volume. The actual protein reading drops. Then, stir in melamine powder. The nitrogen reading climbs right back up. The Geldahl method reads the nitrogen, runs Johann's 1883 arithmetic, and stamps the batch. Approved. You've just convinced a 140-year-old chemistry test that a bucket of diluted milk spiked with a countertop sealant is premium-grade nutrition. By 2006, sales reps were reportedly going farm to farm hawking this stuff as protein powder supplement, delivered in unmarked 25-kilogram brown paper bags, which is exactly the packaging you'd choose for a product you're deeply proud of. Farmers and middlemen poured it straight into the vats. Your kidneys, for the record, are considerably smarter than a 140-year-old nitrogen counter. Congratulations on your kidneys. When melamine reacts with cyanuric acid, which is conveniently present in cheap scrap melamine, it crystallizes into tiny, jagged, insoluble crystals directly inside your urinary tract. In adults, painful, but survivable. In infants whose only diet is formula made from this milk, catastrophic. On May 20th, 2008, a mother posted online about her infant's kidney stones. She'd also just found out that Sanlu had recently donated that exact same formula batch to orphans of the 2008 Sichuan earthquake. So, multiple disasters simultaneously. Sanlu's board heard about it the same day and immediately ordered internal tests, using the Geldahl method, which found nothing wrong. Because of course it did. It wasn't until August 1st, after actual targeted chemical analysis, that melamine was finally confirmed. The board convened on August 2nd. They decided to quietly recall some products without publicly explaining why. At this meeting, the deputy mayor of Shijiazhuang, who had been personally invited to attend, advised the board to quietly pay off the affected families, wait for the Beijing Olympics to conclude, and then let the police deal with it, because nothing derails a global sports festival quite like a mass poisoning. The Beijing Olympics opened on August 8, 2008, and were spectacular. Fireworks, perfectly synchronized drummers, zero mentions of infant kidney stones anywhere in the national news. Now, Sanlu thought they could just sit on this, but Fonterra, the New Zealand cooperative that owns 43% of Sanlu, did not share the local government's patience. They immediately notified the New Zealand government. New Zealand pushed the Chinese central government. The story went public on September 13th. After Sanlu fell, the government tested every major dairy company in the country. They found melamine contamination in products from 21 other companies. 21. Not rogue operations, not fly-by-night startups, direct competitors, major national brands. All of them had independently discovered the exact same exploit for the exact same test, and were running it at an industrial scale simultaneously. The Geldal machine had been fooled by the entire Chinese dairy industry, all at once. Final toll: 300,000 children affected, 54,000 hospitalized, 6 infants died, Sanlu went bankrupt, CEO Tian Wenhao received a life sentence, 2 suppliers were executed, 11 countries suspended Chinese dairy imports, and one 140-year-old chemistry test was finally updated. But the damage to public trust was permanent. Even today, over a decade later, Chinese parents routinely refuse to buy domestic baby formula. It spawned an entire shadow economy of personal shoppers called Daizhou, whose entire job is to fly to Australia, clear supermarket shelves of European formula, and ship it back at a massive markup. Because when a system fails this spectacularly, you don't just patch the exploit, you lose the players forever. Here's what makes this genuinely strange. Nobody broke into a lab. Nobody bribed a scientist. Nobody even touched a keyboard. The exploit worked because somebody simply read the documentation of a standard testing protocol, noticed it measured nitrogen and called that protein, found a cheaper source of nitrogen, and used it instead. The method wasn't broken, it was working exactly as designed. It just wasn't designed to account for people who would read it. By the way, this is my first video and YouTube analytics tell me exactly 100% of you are currently unsubscribed. You can fix that perfect statistic by clicking subscribe. See you next week.